It is harder in a way to write as I get more mature. But I think it's just a part of the journey. Like I I'll become a lot slower in terms of the output, but it's not about being like harder on myself. It's more about me being like more loving with the universe.
On this episode of the Intercut podcast, Amanda and I talked to Cooper Raiff, the filmmaker behind Shithouse and Cha-Cha Real Smooth, as well as the new television series Hal and Harper, which airs its season finale on Mubi November 30th. Cooper is one of the most exciting young voices in independent film, so we were eager to hear more about the thinking that goes into his funny, empathetic brand of filmmaking.
And I was excited to see that your next project after Cha-Cha Real Smooth, which is one of my favorite movies, legitimately, I thought it was interesting that you followed that up with TV, which kind of has so many different rules than when you're kind of making like an independent movie.
Yeah.
But it feels so similar to what you've been doing in the movies. And I want to know if you felt like, was there any constraints in terms of like how you had to put that together to follow certain TV rules? Were people trying to push you on certain things, or did you still feel like you had that creative control?
I think I kind of looked at it actually as having less restraints than a movie. I love movies because I love sitting in a dark room with a bunch of people and experiencing meeting characters in the same sitting as experiencing their climax and their resolution. And with TV, I love TV because to me it's such a or it should be, in my opinion, a character medium that you can have control over how you watch it. It's not it you get to decide when you're ready to go into the next chapter. And um I a couple years before making Hal and Harper, I watched Normal People, and that's my favorite TV show ever.
Oh,
And I the way I would talk about it with people was like I just found it very moving to hear people say like, "Oh, I haven't finished it yet because I'm not ready." And I just love that concept of being able to do that, and TV can be deeper in that way. And I think that not all TV takes advantage of what it can be, but that's what I was trying for with Helen Harper.
Yeah, I mean, your films have this real intimacy to them, but I think that
Mhm.
is really interesting to marry that to television because just by virtue of the medium, right? You spend all these hours hanging out with these characters, and
Yeah,
a lot of times it's just hanging out like while they're on the couch and stuff like that. So
right.
it does really lend itself to the tone you strike, and I think it's interesting how, you know, it's not like a second screen experience, right? You can't really watch the show and be on your phone. You have these filmic elements to it, and it doesn't feel network, right? It doesn't feel like
For
you've
sure. Yeah.
shifted your tone to what we think of as TV.
Yeah.
So were you really trying to make sure you kept the tone that you're more comfortable in, that works for you, and resist any like temptation to like make it more of like a cliffhanger episodic type experience, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was really more, I mean, I think it's probably more my tone than anything I've made.
Hmm.
And I think that I just don't know network TV. And I just knew that I liked, whoa, you get to come back to this. Like I love the TV shows that I love, but
Mm.
I'm not able to watch most network TV. And
Hmm.
so I think that it was a brutal, to be honest, it was a brutal awakening when we finished the show. We showed it to buyers and they were all like, "What is this? We don't even know what this is, let alone want to buy it." And so I had to from there start sort of like the show used to be 10 episodes long, and I
Mm.
cut it down to 8, and in cutting down to 8 I tried to do some cliffhangers. And I think it's kind of noticeable, at least to me and my friends, like where I cut certain things and what I was, and I ultimately it was stuff that it wasn't the first vision I had for it, but I came to love, like, okay, let's like Hal and Abby, the storyline just really got shredded. and in the edit of going from 10 to 8,
Mm.
and it was a bummer, but it was also like that's not really what the show is about. You kind of get a glimpse of like I found something nice about we kind of cut into these scenes with Abby, and you are understanding the key parts of like there's this one scene where you cut in the middle of it and she's just said, I feel like sometimes I don't really know if you're totally genuine. And it's the first you're kind of like, what's happening? And it feels to me like I made Shithouse and I made Cha Cha and this was really about like, okay, this is a medium where I can dive into the family and all three of them and like see them almost as one in a way. Like they're all very different and they're all
Mm.
the whole show is about them being one and trying to separate while also realizing at the end that we are all one. Not just us as a family, but as human beings, we are all um one, but the individuation has to happen, and that's what the show is about. And so it was a bummer to like say goodbye to all these scenes with Havana, but I think it was ultimately for the good, and I'll work with Havana again. We'll do something else together.
Yeah, we're also big fans of Havana here, but I
She's
think
the
you used like
best.
just the right amount. I think everything you were trying to convey with her definitely came through.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm also a really big fan of nonlinear stories. They sort of force the audience to become kind of like a detective and to figure out the
Yeah.
truth. What appealed to you about telling this story that way?
I I'm a I I was gonna say I've always loved doing that, but I guess I haven't. I think I really in my life time really exists but also doesn't exist. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Like I think it's very relatable um to not be present sometimes and to have like uh to 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 feel stuck in something. And it's not like you're never like to me what I mean by that is not like I'm just gonna all of a sudden dissociate and play out a very exact scene of life. Like it's not like a memory like that. Like I think movies usually or shows do like memories in a very structured way of like now we're gonna go back and see this scene with a beginning, middle, and end. And to me, I wanted to sort of do it in a relatable way that I knew was not what people were used to. So I knew I had to kind of train them in that way or um and but when it's confusing, it's confusing for the characters. Like the whole show to me is about these confused kids who needed to be told that everything was going to be okay but weren't told that. And the arc of the show is them learning, hey, everything's going to be okay and we're going to all be still breathing at the end of this. And so yeah, I wanted that element of going back in time, but not necessarily knowing why we are there for a while. And I just had to trust that it would land and that people would keep coming back. Because that's the other thing with TV is like creating the not the mystery, but creating enough to where people want to continue along with them on their journey.
Yeah, I think it definitely works, and I think one of the things that kind of helps pull the audience in such a way with what you're trying to do in terms of, like, people just getting stuck at a moment in time and having to they keep living is that you made the choice to just have you and Lily playing the younger versions of yourself, and I just kinda wanted to know, like, was that just kind of like a last minute decision? Did you always know that's how you wanted to do it? Like, what was the process? And because I think that's one of the best parts about the show.
Yeah, it was the initial idea was I just randomly had an idea of in college, actually, it was like 10 years ago. I was like, what if you had adults playing a 7 and a 9-year old and they were talking about the web series was them talking about things that their dad said to them that were like, no kid should be told that. And so they had to grow they grew up too fast and that's why they look the way that they do. And then I
Mm.
realized the idea actually was like I was like what are the adults doing in their life and it started off as oh these kids had to grow up too fast because something tragic happened and their dad kind of fell asleep, and then he woke up and they became close. And then I started realizing, oh, it's about the present. It's about them being stuck in this, not stuck in this time necessarily, but there was a thing that happened, and then about 5 years later, they all kind of woke up together and started coming together. And the show really is about them in their present coming apart. And so you had to go back in time to see why they came together, and to just like forgive themselves and understand why they came together and why they don't need to be enmeshed anymore.
It's a really interesting way to sort of represent, like you're talking about, their sort of emotional arrested development. But what it's so great about it is it works both on that level and just the joy in the comedy of seeing you and Lily sit at tiny children's desks and interact with these kids in very, like unpretentious ways. It is like, really sells the whole reality of the comedy and drama of the show.
Yeah, it was always so funny to me, and I because I find so many different things so funny, and but I at the same time I had to let go of it, of it landing as funny with other people. Like there's one scene where they're sitting by the bed and the whole conversation is like, Hal says he can't make friends, and he like builds up the courage to tell his sister, and then she's like, "Yeah, first grade's really isolating," and she's smoking a cigarette, and then she says, like, it's really this huge moment to me of Harper finally realizes, oh, she can, this kid is sad and I can do something about it. It's like the first realization that they can kind of come together. And but the line that she says is, "Remember how we're more mature for for our grades, where most first graders are 6, not 7." And I think it's the funniest thing in the world.
Really
But every time we screened it, it was like people were still so like, I don't know, they didn't laugh, so I had to let go of the laughs really, and just trust that Hal and Harper are here for a reason, and the audience is gonna be engaged enough to keep to stay around for that finale, which is the whole show. But I mean, I say that a lot, and I was just thinking, my favorite shot of the whole movie is this, or the whole show is this moment. It just reminded me, Amanda, when you were talking about Harper. It's when they're at the Adventure Landing, and she's like off reading a book, and he's looking around for her and can't find her, and then she like waves, and she like takes him in, and then it cuts to them eating at this booth, and there's this, and it's my favorite shot of the whole show. It's like she's kind of like this, and she's just, it makes me really emotional to even talk about. It's she's like staring at dad, who's not looking at her, he's just like eating. And the way she's looking at him, just, it touches me in a way that is just, I'm not able to articulate. It's just like, it's just very hyper vigilant little girl who's alone, and is really studying to see if he's present, and to see if he's really there. And she's so like beyond her years, but I don't even know what that means. I don't know what that means.
He
Like,
doesn't know what that means,
she is, I know that she's not a normal kid. I know that, but that look, it's the whole show to me in a way. It's like, and it really makes me emotional, because dad is not able to look back and understand what she needs, and she's not able to ask for what she needs. And that's why the song Age of Consent is the whole show. It's, you're not the one who needs to tell me. It's just that's the show, that feeling.
I'm often struck by the kindness that your characters show. They really act selflessly when they'd understandably react with anger. I think about
Very earnest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about how like Raul Castillo's character
Oh yeah.
acts towards yours in Cha Cha Real Smooth, or how empathetic Harper and Jesse are towards each other as they go through their breakup as this show continues along. Is that something that you're actively trying to model in your characters, or is that just sort of where you feel the characters take you as you're writing them?
I think it's always there's a balance, and it's all across the board. Like for me, movies and TV they have the ability to show someone who is tapped into their higher self. Not
Mhm.
that I want every character to be operating at their as their highest self, because that's boring.
Mhm.
But I do like, a profound part of the show for me is Betty Gilpin's Kate, who is being extremely mistreated, and there's this like a big idea of the show that I was is like so important to the show. It's this idea of like, when you trust someone, you trust someone. And so, and it's profoundly selfless. It's profoundly without ego, but it is like completely still inside of oneself. It's like episode 3, when dad's just been like completely tapped out for like 15 minutes of the episode or something. And then she in bed goes over to him and whispers in his ear, "I trust you." And then later on, like 3 episodes later, when he comes back and finally apologizes, he's like begging her to like, "Please, please, I promise I'll do this and this, and I'll earn your trust back." And she says, "You never lost it. I trust you." And to me, that is, like, people can say all they want, that is extremely unrealistic. And I, to some extent, am like, I fully understand that, but that's the stuff of movies and TV to me, is to be able to show what is the purity of this idea of telling your partner that you trust them, and what's this idea of really knowing, of really having faith in someone,
Mhm.
and going along, not letting yourself be uh hold the weight of dad's stuff, because I think that's the other thing that Kate teaches them is, I'm not going to hold your pain, but I am going to, um and I am going to tell you how I'm affected by it, and I'm going to yell at you, and I'm going to
Mhm.
scream all the things that I'm thinking, but I'm not going to stop trusting and loving you, and I'm gonna trust that I'm gonna have boundaries when I need to have boundaries. That, all that stuff. Like, I think that, but to answer your question, that Raul moment in Cha Cha is like, yeah, of course you could have him punch him in the face, and that would have been fine too.
Mhm.
But why not give this thing to the audience that is, are you really like, is he like, this isn't a moment that this guy needs to feel so insecure
Mhm.
about Andrew.
Mhm.
Like, he's got so many other things in his life and what he's thinking about,
Mhm.
and the thing he says is like, don't, he like tells him not to beat himself up. He's like, I wasn't here, you were
Mhm.
here, and you're a fucking kid, glad you know now. But it's not, he's got, it's kind of this nod, really, honestly, a nod more than anything else, to his whole life. He's got such a fucking life, and Andrew is a fucking speck. Andrew was
Mhm.
there, and now he knows Andrew's not going to be there. And I guess like that's what I, for the audience, it's important for me to like, to zoom out, I guess, and that kindness is a part of the zooming out a lot of the time for me.
Yeah, I really love that aspect of Cha-Cha
Yeah.
specifically, and I also think it's what Andrew probably needed the most in that moment, because you know he's waiting. He's waiting for a blow up. He's waiting for this guy to like punch him or scream at him or really like cut him down. And it probably hurts more when he's just kind of like, I get it. I'm not going to be mad. This is what's going on from here on out. And then Andrew really has to kind of be like, okay, I need
Right.
to get my stuff together. Which I really like. And that kind of brings me into another thing that I love about how you handle yourself in the movies is with the earnestness, you were also willing to let yourself be the worst person in the room if the story needs it. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that, or they do it in a way where they can still kind of come across as like really funny. But like you have your moments in Hal and Harper where you kind of are coming across as petulant as the full college student, not even as the younger version of yourself, very similar to like in Cha-Cha when you have the little blow up at your little brother. Is that a conscious choice, or do you just kind of like know that that's where the character needs to go, or is it kind of like examining something within yourself too?
Something examining something within the character who I relate a lot to, and I
Mhm.
think that to me it's like it's just knowing them well enough. Like Andrew is someone who like really presents and tries so hard to be the best possible version of what the person across from him needs, and that's exhausting. And it leads to a lot of resentment and anger, and sometimes that anger is going to come out at the wrong people. And that's that scene with the little brother is just, it's just to me the most realistic scene, just like all of
Mhm.
the scenes are like
Hmm.
it felt bizarrely natural to me. It's in a heartbreaking way. um
Mhm.
and uh I think there was a scene at some point in a draft that he like really blows up at his mom, but it felt too, it felt like too on the nose of showing his kind of mommy issues and how they relate to Domino. It just felt like it was
Right.
too like, wait. I think some people you want to let them absorb it subconsciously as opposed to being like, you see what is
Is
happening
it?
here? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it became David because it was the person. It was honestly also the person he was closest to at the time when he was feeling this
Mhm.
complete rejection or resentment of like, oh wait, I've been having this awesome time with Domino, but Joseph is still exists,
Yeah.
and I can just get thrown out of the house
Mhm.
at a moment's notice.
Circling back to Hal and Harper, the season finale has this, really cathartic experience for your characters where they get to say some of the things that we've been waiting for them to say across 8 episodes, and they get to embrace and they get to cry together. But you close the finale on this really interesting moment, a quieter, melancholic moment with Audrey's character. I was really curious what made you want to leave the audience on that note instead of the more hopeful one, which very easily could have been that final moment.
It's something about like the feeling that I get when I watch these. Like it's so I I knew it was going to be so like epic feeling the last montage, and it was always set to that Frank Ocean remix, and I just knew it
Great
was like
choice.
it was such a it's such a kind of you really euphoric send off of like they're gonna be okay and they're gonna be apart and it's gonna be okay. And then when I watch those things and the credits are rolling, I'm like, wait, I have to go home. Like, or and it's that feeling of like, it's not there's just a come down.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have that come down on screen where it's not advocating for not for someone not healing, but it is acknowledging the reality of how you need some soothing noise. And I just love that aspect of the show that Harper, Audrey kind of, they're both very similar. And I
Hmm.
think the advice that Harper gives to turn it on, to turn the sound machine on, even when the kids aren't there, is comes from a really knowing place, and also helps Harper, I think, a little bit, like in terms of she reminds Audrey like what's hers, but I think she's also like she's reminding herself of like it's not going to be easy for Harper to say goodbye to Hal. Like I think the show feels like that in some way. It's like, oh, Harper just needs to get rid of this attachment, but it's like it's gonna be fucking hard for her. Like
Yeah.
the when the kids are out of the house, it's quiet.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
and when Hal's not calling her and wanting to be in her bed, and when Jesse's not in the picture, it's gonna be quiet. And I think that to me was like, it was an acknowledgement of like where Hal and Harper are going to be in some deep quiet, and hopefully they can turn on their noise machine.
Yeah, I really like that because obviously you kind of set up that Harper's been so much of a caretaker from a young age, like kind of having to, like that moment you mentioned when she's looking at the dad being like, are you going to be able to, and kind of realizing maybe not. So if you can't do it, I'm going to have to do it.
Right.
And then continuing to do it, continuing to answer those like 3 a.m. want to go to McDonald's calls. And then thinking you hate it. And in some ways being like, I wish it wasn't always like this. But then once it's gone, you know that they're both really going to be kind of struggling for it, which I think in the long run will probably make them closer again towards the end. They don't have to get to the point where it's like the huge exploding point, or at least you can come back from the exploding point. So I do actually really like that you chose to end on that note, because it would be so easy to kind of just cut it back just a bit before that. It does feel very Normal People, with that being one of your favorite shows too. Just one of those, it's like the memorable ending. It's the one where everyone's like, oh, we are going that one extra step. So
it resonates.
Yeah, it really resonated.
To zoom out a bit, the way you say you like to with your characters, you got your start in filmmaking at a pretty young age. Not that you're not still young now. For me personally, I know when I was a younger writer, I felt like I wrote without inhibition. And of course, I didn't really know much then. And as I've become older, I feel like I know more, but I also write with less freedom than I used to. I was curious, putting aside financials, I wanted to know, do you find making things to be easier or more challenging than when you were first starting out?
It's a really good question, and how it's harder because as you grow older, you realize there's so much nuance to everything. I think that a lot of people can sometimes confuse doubt with just awareness. Like I have a lot more, I could say I have a lot more self-doubt now, but like, it's really just, I have more awareness of how, well, there's more nuance there. And do I really want to have this here? Because is that saying that it's like, it is harder in a way to write as I get more mature, but I think it's just a part of the journey. Like I'll become a lot slower in terms of the outputs, but it's because I'm not it's not about being like harder on myself. It's more about me being like more loving with the universe. And so yeah, but it's not harder to, I think I have way more stuff to write about, like I'm writing more. It's just a matter of like, is this right? Is this the right thing for this moment? And there is more questioning, because I have more questions as I get older. And I know that there's more than one answer, I guess, is the thing.
I really appreciate that answer.
Yeah. I guess following up on that, do you know kind of where you want to go next? Like, do any big plans, or are you just still pretty locked in on Hal and Harper and just kind of riding out this? Or
no, I have these right now. I have 2 movies that are ready to go, and I'm kind of just deciding which one is the right one for the next thing. But I'll make it at the start of next year, and they're both movies, and one is a lot bigger and the other one is I want to make sure that I get to make both of them, so I'm just kind of struggling with picking right now, but both,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, but both I really want to make, and I will go ahead and say that I will make both of them in my life.
I believe you will.
Yeah.
I hope you do.
I hope so.
I want that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, whenever they get made, we'll be really excited to catch them. We've been enjoying everything you've made so far. So, but best of luck, and hope we can see those projects sooner rather than later.
Thank you so much.